Hey guys, tonight we journey deep into the mists of time to a place where stone corridors echo with nothing but the sound of your own breath, and hearts speak in the language of silence. Imagine waking in a cell so small you could touch both walls at once. The morning fog wraps the cloister like a shroud. You sit up slowly on your straw mattress, the scent of candle wax and cold stone clinging to your robe. You don't speak not because you can't, but because you've sworn not to. This isn't just any monastery. This is your whole world now. You are Brother Ilarion, though no one has said your name aloud in months. You live in the 14th century, tucked in a remote abbey, carved into the hills somewhere between Burgundy and obscurity. You probably won't survive this century, by the way. Plague, famine, religious zealots, it's a miracle you even made it to your vow of silence. But here you are, breathing in incense and discipline. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, what's your current local time, and where in the world are you listening from? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the waking cloister, the mist clinging to your sandals like cobwebs. The bells toll a slow rhythm, 3 notes for morning prayer. The other monks shuffle beside you in brown wool robes, eyes lowered, each lost in their own internal litany. You've learned their silences as others learn speech. Brother Mateo clears his throat when he's anxious. Brother Tomas taps his thumb when he forgets the Psalms. You simply listen. That's what silence has taught you, how to hear everything. The chapel looms at the heart of the compound, older than memory and twice as cold. Inside, flickering candlelight throws long shadows on cracked icons. You kneel on the stone, feel its damp bite seep into your knees. Above you, stained glass filters pale light. Christ and Mary painted in forgotten blues. You bow deeply. Words bubble up in your throat, trapped prayers you've stopped trying to shape. You learned early that silence isn't just quiet, it's weight. It's choosing not to relieve the pressure inside. It's devotion through containment. After morning prayers, your chores await. Today, it's firewood and beeswax. You move slowly, purposefully. The stack of logs behind the chapel is slick with dew and your hands ache from the cold. You pretend each log is a confession you never made. You carry them anyway. There's a path that winds behind the outer wall of the abbey. It's not on any map, not part of any duty. You discovered it months ago during a rainstorm, slipping away unnoticed. As the bells called the others to vespers, something pulled you then, something more than rebellion, less than clarity. And ever since you've returned to that path in secret. Today, as the sun fights to lift the fog, your feet find their way back once more. The path leads through the woods dense with pine and memory. The air smells of damp bark and something faintly sweet. Honeysuckle, maybe. You step carefully, robe whispering against branches, and emerge at the edge of a clearing. There it is. The spring. Crystal clear, ringed by moss-covered stones and laced with wild violets. You first found it by accident, like most of the beautiful things in your life. And just like before, there's a sound you don't expect humming. She is there again. The girl. You don't know her name. You've never spoken. But she returns always at dawn or dusk with a basket on her hip and bare feet in the water. She sings softly a tune you don't recognize but now know by heart. It weaves through the trees like smoke, like a prayer meant only for the leaves. You stay hidden as always. Watching feels wrong, but leaving feels worse. Her presence cracks something inside you, a silence not chosen but broken. You press your hand to your chest. The vow holds, but barely. Historians still argue whether monks like you ever truly kept their vows of silence. Some claim they were allowed practical speech, others say complete muteness. But you've gone farther than most, and no one knows about her. Back in the cloister, the day passes in slow rituals. You scrub floors, mend robes, and light evening candles with trembling fingers. At dinner, Brother Matteo watches you. He says nothing, of course, but his eyes ask too much. Later in your cell, you press a sprig of violet between the pages of your breviary. You close it slowly, like hiding a secret inside a prayer. It's a quiet act of rebellion. Your first, and not your last. You rise before the bell the next morning, heart thudding with the quiet panic of anticipation. The cloister is still asleep, wrapped in the fragile hush of pre-dawn. Your sandals scrape lightly against the stone as you slip down the corridor, passing statues of saints who seem to glance sideways at you. You try not to meet their gaze. Their carved eyes are too understanding. Your breath fogs in the cold air as you step into the courtyard. The stars are fading, the sky just beginning to pale, and you feel the pull again, that impossible thread between you and the woods. But you don't go there today. Instead, you kneel in the chapel, a candle clutched in both hands wax, already softening from the warmth of your fingers. You light it with a shaky breath. This is the morning you take your vow. The abbot stands before you robed in black with silver-threaded cuffs. His voice is slow and sure as he intones the ritual words in Latin, older than the walls shaped by centuries of silence and devotion. You listen, not with your ears but your whole body. This isn't just ceremony, it's transformation. He asks you to confirm your intent. You nod once eyes closed. Then the final question. Will you accept the silence until death and surrender your voice in service to the Lord? You answer the only way you can now, by not speaking at all. A pause. Then he breathes, Benedictus es frater. Blessed are you, brother. And just like that, it is done. Your voice dies without a funeral. You rise lightheaded and place your candle on the altar among 100 flickering others. For a moment, the chapel feels like a star-strewn sky, each flame a tiny soul offering its brightness in sacrifice. You wonder if any of those flames ever whispered a name like hers. You are Brother Ilarion now, fully, though you suspect deep down that she still remembers your true name, the one you whispered to her reflection in the spring once when you thought no one listened. That same afternoon you tend the cloister bees. Their hum surrounds you as you move among the hives, smoke drifting lazily from your censer. You've always admired the bees, their silent labor, their sacred order. No words yet, perfect understanding. They remind you of her. You think about the vow, about what you've given up. It's not just sound, it's protest, laughter, confession. It's the ability to ever tell her why your hands shook that day she touched your wrist. There's an ache forming under your ribs like a bruise you can't explain. It's not sin exactly. More like the memory of a song that once made you cry. Later that night, you retreat to your cell and find a folded piece of paper beneath the straw of your mattress. Your heart stutters. It's a note. The script is rough, but unmistakably hers. I saw you today, it reads. By the vines. You did not think she noticed. She must have followed you or waited. I heard the bells, it continues. They rang for you, didn't they? You stare at the words. Your vow presses against you like iron. You want to respond, but how you could write back? But what would you say would even one word betray everything? Instead, you press the note to your lips, then fold it into a triangle and tuck it behind the worn crucifix on your wall. Some things are too sacred for language. The next day, you walk farther from the abbey into the tangled woods until the sounds of chanting monks fade behind you. You find a clearing full of wild thyme and lie flat on the earth, letting the scent wrap around you like incense. Clouds drift lazily overhead. You watch them move and try to imagine what it would feel like to simply float. Free. Soundless. Not silent, but beyond speech altogether. A hawk circles above. You smile just a little. Historians still argue whether silence in these monastic orders was meant as humility or control. Was it a spiritual gift or a punishment in disguise? Some say it forged deep inner clarity. Others think it simply crushed young men too timid to resist. You're starting to wonder if both are true. When you return, Brother Matteo is waiting by your door. He doesn't speak, neither of you can, but his eyes are questions. He places a single fig on your windowsill, a strange gesture. A warning, a peace offering, or a reminder of Eden. You nod slightly. He turns and walks away. You eat the fig slowly, letting its sweetness linger on your tongue longer than it has any right to. That night, sleep avoids you. You think of her hands braiding flowers into her hair, of the way she once looked over her shoulder when she thought she was alone. You remember the moment you knew. Not when you saw her, but when she saw you and didn't look away. You roll onto your side eyes open and listen to the breath of the cloister. It sounds like an ocean caught in prayer. In that deep quiet, you whisper something. It isn't a word, but it isn't silence either. The morning breaks with fog thick as wool, wrapping the abbey like a secret. You move through the stone corridors with practiced ease, each step soft against the worn floor. Your sandals whispering over the smooth stone like the hush of a turning page. The bell calls you to Laud's first prayer of the day. You join the procession of monks, shoulders touching lightly as you enter the chapel, but no one speaks. Silence is not emptiness here, it's the substance of every breath, every bow, every glance. As you kneel, your thoughts betray you. Not of heaven or scripture, but of her, the girl at the spring with wild eyes and wind-tangled hair. You try to drown her image in the Psalms. It doesn't work. After prayer, the day begins as it always does, rhythm without voice. You scrub stone steps until your hands are red, trim the garden with slow reverence, and carry water from the well. The silence among your brothers isn't lonely, it's layered. You've learned to read their gestures, the soft nods, the turn of a head. A smile is as loud as a laugh if you look close enough. These men are your kin now, their every movement a part of your own inner stillness. And yet even here, wordless bonds form. You share tools with Brother Tomas in the garden. He passes you a trowel without looking, knowing you needed it. You leave honey on Brother Matteo's bench. He likes it, though he pretends not to care. These tiny kindnesses are your shared language. You wonder if she would understand this language, too. Today, during work in the garden, you find a daisy tucked between two bricks on the outer wall. It wasn't there yesterday. Its petals are half wilted, but the message is unmistakable. She's been here. Watching, waiting. You glance around. No one sees you pocket it. That night, you crush the flower between pages of an old hymnal, its scent still faint. You trace its stem with your finger, and a strange thought enters your mind. Could she be praying too, to whom, to what? Or is this enough? Historians still debate whether such silent monastic routines truly fostered enlightenment, or simply masked emotional starvation. Were men like you transcending the world or hiding from it? You don't have the answer, but you know her presence has awakened something no liturgy ever could. During the week you notice a shift. The air between you and the other monks thickens. They watch you a bit too long. Brother Matteo lingers near your work. The abbot's gaze narrows whenever he passes you in the hall. No one says anything, but then no one ever says anything. Still you feel it. Suspicion is louder than bells. And guilt? Guilt lives in your bones now. You try to focus on your duties to submerge yourself in ritual. You illuminate a page in the scriptorium gold leaf, sticking stubbornly to your fingers. You write Beatus Vir. Blessed is the man. But your hand drifts, your mind drifts. Before you know it, you've drawn a tiny figure in the margin, a woman by a spring hair curling like vines. You catch yourself tear the page out and burn it, but it's too late. You've already written her into the sacred. Later that night, you return to the garden, pretending to tend the lavender. You find another note tucked beneath a broken stone. Do you remember the bird? You do. That day, a swallow had flown between you, dipping its wings in the spring before vanishing into the trees. She had laughed a sound that lived in your ribs for weeks. You remember thinking, that bird has more freedom than I ever will. But you didn't tell her that. Of course you didn't tell her anything. You leave a response, not words, but a feather, soft and pale. You press it beneath the stone and walk away without turning back. 3 jokes swirl through your head as you walk. 1, monks aren't supposed to fall in love. 2, vows don't stop dreams. And 3, the only thing more dangerous than speaking your love is letting it grow in silence. You laugh once silently, then bite the inside of your cheek until it hurts. The next day, rain arrives. The cloister transforms into a world of dripping eaves and shuffling robes. The stone corridors echo differently now, like a cave, like the inside of a cathedral turned upside down. You sit by the window of the scriptorium watching drops race each other down the glass. You think of her soaked in rain dress, clinging to her knees, laughter pouring out like wine. You grip your stylus tighter and return to your task, copying out the Psalms. Line by line, verse by verse. But your heart keeps straying to that place beyond the wall, beyond the rules, beyond the vow. Brother Matteo enters behind you. You feel him pause, watching your hand. Then he moves on. You don't know how much longer you can keep this up, but you know that you will. Because in a world without words, even longing becomes a kind of prayer. And you have been praying for her longer than you realized. Twilight creeps in like spilled ink bleeding slowly over the stone walls as you finish your evening tasks. The air hangs heavy with lavender and damp linen, and the monastery folds inward for the night. But your thoughts press outward beyond the cloister wall out toward the forest, where the trees lean like old conspirators. You slip through the garden gate under the guise of composting scraps. But really, you're following the call, the quiet gravity that pulls you toward her. The path is soft with moss, the kind that muffles your footfalls and encourages secrets. You know every bend by now, every root that snags your sandal, every low branch that brushes your shoulder like a blessing, and then like a vision conjured by your longing she is there. Kneeling at the spring sleeves, rolled up, humming the same wordless melody you now know better than most hymns. She doesn't flinch when you arrive. She never does. Her awareness of you is eerie, like the forest itself tells her when you're near. You sit on a low stone beside the water, still silent, still sworn. But she smiles at you, soft and unafraid. That smile is a dialogue all its own familiar teasing, just a little sad. She hands you something, a smooth stone warm from her palm. A line scratched into it with some crude tool, a circle half shaded. The moon, maybe, or the passage of time. You nod, trying not to let the weight of the gesture crack you open. You respond the only way you can. You take off your glove and you set it beside her hand in the grass. You let her see the raw skin, the ink-stained fingers, the calluses from garden shears. This is you, unspoken, unhidden. She leans in a little, just enough to make the air tremble. A frog splashes into the spring, and both of you jump startled, then laugh in the same breath. And you realize something strange. She's been silent too. Not by vow, but by choice. For your sake. For this fragile communion between the rule and the impossible. Historians still argue whether monks ever formed deep attachments in secret. Some say human bonds inevitably grew shaped by proximity and the absence of distraction. Others claim the vows cleansed such desire. But you felt the truth in your spine. There is a love that does not speak, but roars in its restraint. She reaches into her satchel and pulls out a thin bundle wrapped in linen, dried herbs tied with a thread. Rosemary, lavender, and something peppery you can't place. She hands it to you. No words, just eyes that ask, "Do you understand you do?" You leave before the moon rises too high. Heart louder than your footsteps, the bundle pressed to your chest like contraband. Back at the Abbey, everything looks too clean, too ordered. Like the silence here is a cage instead of a comfort. You pass the refectory still lit by guttering candles and catch Brother Matteo staring at the wall. Not reading, not eating, just watching. The bundle goes beneath your mattress next to the notes and the wilting daisy and that feather you still haven't returned. You tell yourself you'll find a way to end this gracefully, but your dreams say otherwise. That night you dream of standing at the altar in the chapel. Except the candles are all out. The saints' faces have been scratched from the glass, and she stands beside you, veiled in mist, holding out her hand. You reach for her. Your fingers pass through smoke. The next morning, you're late for morning chores. Brother Matteo notes it with a sideways glance, but says nothing. You try to compensate by hauling twice the water, sweeping the cloister steps until your knuckles bleed against the broom handle. But guilt is a poor detergent. It lingers. After prayers, you find a folded slip of parchment beneath your bowl. One word tonight, it's not her handwriting. Panic flares up in your throat like fire. Someone else knows. Someone is playing with you. You spend the rest of the day bracing for confrontation, every passing brother a threat, every glance a verdict. You nearly break your vow just to scream, but no one says anything. And that night when you go to the spring, she isn't there. Only the wind. Only the sound of frogs and owls. Only silence this time, not chosen but enforced. You sit for an hour, maybe more. Long enough for the cold to sink into your bones and turn your fingers numb. You trace patterns in the dirt, spirals, loops, her initials. But she does not come. When you return to the Abbey, you find your cell door ajar. Inside your bed is stripped, your hymnals removed, your mattress lifted to reveal everything. The flower, the notes, the feather, gone. You drop to your knees. You do not cry, your training is too deep for that. But you do feel something tear quietly within you. A thread, perhaps, or a hope. And still you say nothing. Not a word. Because silence even now is the only thing that still belongs to you. You sit in the cold dark of your cell, listening to every creak in the floorboards above, every echo from the courtyard, every breath that is not your own. The absence of her of the bundle, the notes, the feather is louder than any choir. You feel flayed, not with blades, but with precision. Someone has peeled back the layers of your hidden self and left you bare beneath the gaze of heaven. And worse the brethren, you sleep a little, fitfully. A dream comes not of her, but of the abbot. He stands over you with a candle that drips wax onto your chest. He says nothing, but you feel the heat and it burns in the shape of a question. What have you done when morning comes? It feels like a sentence. The bells ring and you rise. Slowly, mechanically. There's no note today, no daisy, no feather. Just you and the silence and the raw, exposed quiet where her memory used to curl up safe in your mind. At breakfast, no one sits beside you. Brother Mateo avoids your eyes. So do the others. It's subtle, barely a shift in posture, a half-second delay in passing you the bread, but the pattern is unmistakable. You have become a ghost. The abbot summons you that afternoon. You walk the length of the refectory like a man approaching the scaffold. He stands by the high windows, hands folded, eyes fixed on the distant hills beyond the cloister walls. His voice is low when he finally speaks. You haven't heard it in months. It feels foreign, like thunder after a drought. You've broken nothing, he says. And yet, you've broken everything. He turns to face you. Do you understand? You nod. But he keeps looking as if waiting for more. Silence stretches between you, brittle as old parchment. And still you hold your vow. He sighs. Brother Mateo came to me. Of course he did. He saw you leave, the abbot says. He followed once. Only once. That was all it took. There's a pause. He waits again like someone who still believes confession might save you. But you remain still. Silent. There are many kinds of devotion, he says at last, but only one kind of obedience. He dismisses you with a gesture that feels more like excommunication than mercy. Historians still argue whether silent monks were truly expected to confess sins in writing, or if some simply bore their guilt until death. Some abbeys we know maintained strict penance rituals. Others turned a blind eye. What yours will do is anyone's guess. But that evening you are given a new task. No longer are you permitted in the scriptorium. You are sent instead to the root cellar beneath the chapel, a place of shadows, mildew, and rats. You descend without protest. It smells of vinegar and salt and things that never see the sun. You spend your hours sorting turnips, sacks of them, filthy knotted things that look like the twisted hearts of old men. Your robe snags on nails. Your hands blister. You do not complain. You do not speak. You begin to count the days and seeds. One black seed on the stone beside your bed every night. A new rhythm. A quiet calendar. It's 5 seeds later when you see her again. Or perhaps it's only her shadow. You're sweeping the cloister walk dusk, bleeding across the garden when you glimpse her at the far edge of the trees. Her figure lit by the sinking sun, standing perfectly still. Watching. You freeze, breath shallow. But before you can move, she turns and is gone. Vanished? You don't sleep that night. The next day, something is left at your cell door. A tiny sprig of rosemary. Fresh. Fragrant. You crush it in your fingers and inhale, eyes stinging. That evening after your cellar duties, you slip away. Just once more. Just to be sure. The path is half choked with thorns, now overgrown, neglected, but you know its bones. You find your way in the dark, guided by memory and desire and some irrational hope. The spring is empty. Moonlight glimmers on the surface. No birds, no footprints, no hum. But something catches your eye. A single thread red as wine tied to the branch of the ash tree where she once sat. A thread so thin you'd miss it unless you were looking with your whole soul. You touch it. It breaks in your hand. Historians still argue about this spring. Some say it was sacred even before the abbey was built, an old Celtic shrine, a place of healing and visions. Others call it superstition, pagan nonsense. But standing here in the quiet drip of water and moonlight, you feel something ancient. Something neither vow nor doctrine can erase. You kneel, palms open, and for the first time since your silence began, a single tear escapes down your cheek. No one sees. No one hears. But it is the loudest thing you've done in weeks. The next morning your robe smells of earth and rosemary. You do not wash it. You want the scent to linger, to carry her into the cloister with you, a ghost in your threads. You're assigned to sweep the eastern corridor again, and you do so slowly, deliberately drawing each bristle stroke, as if sketching something in the dust. It's meaningless, of course, but it gives your hands purpose. It lets your silence feel full instead of hollow. Brother Mateo passes once. He doesn't stop, but he pauses just long enough for you to hear his breath hitch. He knows you went out again. Or suspects. Which might be worse. After chores, you retreat to the library, not the scriptorium, which is still off limits, but the dusty upper shelves where older, forgotten volumes sleep under cobweb veils. You pull a tome nearly as tall as your forearm, De Vita Solitaria by Petrarch. Its pages crackle like old leaves. No one's read this in years. You study the passages, fingers trembling over the Latin. Words leap at you, contemplatio desiderium silentium. Contemplation. Desire. Silence. You don't need a scholar to translate the war inside you. One passage barely legible stops your heart. True solitude is not the absence of others, but the fullness of longing. You sit with that line. You copy it into the margin of your breviary, small, careful, hidden under a layer of hymn notations. If anyone finds it, they'll think it devotional. Maybe it is. That evening, something changes. Brother Mateo speaks. Not aloud, of course not. But he leaves you a folded note, plain unmarked, wedged beneath the bench in the cloister garden, where you often sit at dusk. You open it with numb fingers. It says, "She has been seen with the bishop's men." Your stomach drops. She with them. You reread it 5 times, then burn it beneath the garden lamp. What does it mean? Had they caught her? Was she taken? Was she questioned? Was it voluntary? All-day questions bruise the inside of your skull. You try to bury them beneath psalms, beneath turnips, beneath silence, but they bloom like weeds through stone. That night you dream of her in chains, her voice stolen by force instead of vow. You wake in a sweat, half tempted to scream, but your vow has become instinct. You make no sound. You consider the rules. You remember your training. You try to trust your faith, and still you plan. You begin carving again. Not icons this time, but tiny figures. Her face in profile, her hand raised, her feet in motion. You use the edge of your spoon. The wood comes from an old broom handle. Each night after your chores, you add a little more. It's not art, it's survival. Historians still debate whether monks used carving as a devotional act or as quiet protest. Some artifacts suggest entire love stories hidden in stylized vines and animals on cloister beams. Others argue it was purely symbolic. But as your fingers work each curve of her hair, you know this is your confession. 3 days later, another sprig of rosemary appears. But this one is different. It's tied with black thread. You feel your breath leave your body like smoke. Black. Morning, a warning, or perhaps goodbye. You walk the full cloister that day, scanning every face. No one meets your eyes, not even the abbot. It's as though you've already disappeared and just haven't caught up with the fact. You consider writing something, a note, a single word, but even your fingers hesitate now. You are held not just by your vow, but by the ritual of silence, its comfort, its cruel logic. You wonder if she knows that, if she forgives it. That evening you visit the spring for what you silently promise will be the last time. The forest is hushed, even the frogs subdued. The water glistens like glass untouched. There is something beneath the ash tree. Not her, but something else. A small parcel wrapped in waxed cloth. You open it with shaking hands. Inside is a bundle of lavender, a pressed violet, and a page torn from a devotional book. The text is Latin, worn at the edges, but the ink is fresh. Someone her perhaps has underlined a single phrase, amor tacitus verior est. Silent love is truer. You sit for a long time beneath the tree, staring at the bundle, the page, the echo of her presence. You do not weep, but you do finally speak. One word, a name, hers, spoken only to the trees, only to the spring, only to the part of you that never truly wanted salvation if it meant forgetting her. In the morning, the birds sing with absurd cheerfulness as though nothing in the world has cracked or vanished. You listen to them while scrubbing the chapel floor, your knees aching against the cold stone. The rhythm of your brush is steady, almost hypnotic. Back and forth, but your mind is elsewhere. Always elsewhere now. You still haven't told anyone about the parcel at the spring? You won't. It wasn't meant for anyone else's eyes, not the abbot's, not Brother Mateo's, not even God's if you're honest. It was meant for you and the version of her who lived outside the reach of duty. The pressed violet now lives in your breviary just past Psalm 42. As the deer longs for streams of water, so my soul longs for you, O God. You try not to smirk at the irony. But really, it's not God your soul longs for, not today. That evening you light the chapel candles early. It's a small rebellion. The abbot prefers them lit right before Vespers. But you need the ritual now, the wax, the fire, the momentary control of something bright. You kneel and let the flame illuminate your face. The light flickers against the gold leaf of the altar, making the crucified Christ seem to breathe. You wonder not for the first time whether he too was silent when it mattered most. There's a creak behind you. You turn. It's Brother Mateo. He looks tired, not angry, just worn. He gestures to the floor beside you, asking to join you in prayer. You nod once. The two of you kneel together for a long while. Then, still kneeling, he slides a small folded parchment into your hand. You hesitate, but take it. When he leaves you, wait until you're alone to open it. It's a drawing, a crude one. But you recognize her. Her outline, her hair. Standing on the edge of the woods just before the spring. And a single line beneath, I didn't tell them. You close your eyes. This changes nothing and everything. Mateo could have betrayed you. He still might. But this gesture, quiet, uncertain, is the closest thing to absolution you'll ever get here. That night in the cellar, you find yourself singing under your breath. Just a hum. Just a wisp of melody. One of hers. It startles you when it happens, like your mouth has a memory your mind had long forgotten. You stop terrified someone might have heard, but the shadows say nothing. The rats keep eating in peace. You carve again. This time not her, not you, but both. Side by side. No faces. Just two silhouettes beneath an arch of trees. It feels like writing a letter to someone who will never read it. Historians still argue whether monastic cellars were used for storage or for penance. Some abbeys recorded them as discipline chambers. Others use them for quiet meditation. Yours apparently is both, and neither. It has become your sanctuary, your exile, your studio of grief. You finish the carving just before dawn. You don't know what to do with it, so you carry it to the chapel. You place it at the foot of the altar behind the candlesticks where no one dusts anymore. You tuck it between shadows in the hope that no one looks too closely. It's not an offering, not really. It's a tombstone of what you're not yet sure. The next day is unusually warm. The courtyard smells like damp stone and apple blossoms. The other monks seem lighter too, as if spring itself had finally decided to arrive. Someone sings a chant in the garden. It floats through the cloister like incense. You walk the perimeter of the abbey alone. The stones underfoot are familiar now, worn smooth by centuries of feet and regret. Your fingers brush the hedges. You count steps without thinking. You stop at the wall, that old familiar place. You find nothing there. No notes, no flowers, no thread. She's gone. And the ache is different now. Not sharp, not burning, just steady. A presence shaped like an absence. Back in your cell, you find the scent of rosemary has faded. All that's left is the memory of it, bitter woody, a fragrance you'll never smell again without feeling something crack quietly inside. You write her name once in your breviary, just the initials. You hide it in the corner of a psalm no one reads. LD. No one will know what it means. But you will. Always. The days become routine again, or at least they wear the mask of routine. You rise with the bell, you move through prayers like a shadow among shadows, and your chores stretch long and uneventful. The silence that once felt like sacred discipline now tastes like ash in your mouth, dry, bitter, and brittle. But still you keep it. Because if you break the silence now, everything might shatter. You begin to measure time differently. Not in hours or psalms, but in how often you dream of her. At first it's every night, then every other, then none. And that absence oddly stings more than the dreams did. Dreams at least allowed a kind of visitation. Now even your sleep has learned to forget. You spend more and more time in the cloister garden. The others assume you're meditating. You don't correct them. You sit beneath the yew tree, the same one she once passed on her way to the spring, and you watch the wind toy with the petals of the almond blossoms. You think about how much of love is simply noticing. Noticing how someone walks, how they smile crookedly, how they twist their fingers when they're nervous. You wonder if anyone here notices you like that. Probably not. One afternoon, Brother Mateo approaches. He carries a wooden pail of water and a small trowel. Without speaking, he begins to work beside you, kneeling among the roots. Planting something. You don't ask what. He doesn't offer. But as he works, he hums, and you recognize the melody. It's her tune. Your chest tightens, then loosens. Just a little. He doesn't look at you. Just says softly, carefully, like a man testing the air before a storm. They took her to the bishop's court. You blink. It's the first time you've heard a human voice directed at you in weeks. It sounds strange, almost painful. She wasn't charged, Mateo adds. Just questioned. He places the last seed into the soil, pats the earth closed, and adds, "She didn't say your name." Then he stands and leaves. Just like that. The weight of his words crashes over you slowly like dusk descending in layers. She protected you, even though she didn't have to. Even though it would have been easier for her to say the truth, to hand over the name of the foolish, silent monk who carved love into wood and pressed flowers like sins. Instead, she carried the silence too. That evening, you find your hands shaking as you copy verses in the library. You smear ink. You rip a page. You curse inwardly, though the words never leave your mouth. The passage you're transcribing reads, "Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast." You want to write, "Love does not survive in silence." But you don't. You leave the scripture untouched. Historians still argue whether the bishops' courts of the 14th century truly prosecuted village women for their associations with monks. Some say the records were scrubbed, the shame buried with parchment and prayer. Others believe the cases were quietly dismissed out of mercy or embarrassment. There's no record of her, that much is certain. No name in the archives. No mention in the ledgers. As if she were never more than smoke. You begin tending to the root cellar again. Not out of punishment this time, but out of habit. It's quieter down there. Deeper. Older. It smells of stone and things the sun forgot. One night while stacking preserves, you knock loose a stone in the back wall, just a small one. But behind it, nestled in the dust and cobwebs, is a scrap of parchment. Ancient, fragile, barely legible. You pull it out gently, heart suddenly racing. It's a letter, written in Latin but not from Scripture. It begins to the one I dare not name. Your breath catches. The ink is faded, but the sentiment is unmistakable, words of yearning, of devotion, of silence held between two souls who were never allowed to speak. It's not her handwriting. It's centuries old, but it feels like a mirror. Someone else was here before you. Someone else loved silently. And someone else left a trace. You fold the letter and return it behind the stone. You don't need to keep it. Just knowing it exists is enough. You are not the first. You won't be the last, and somehow that's comforting. When you lie down that night, you don't reach for your carvings or your pressed flowers or even your breviary. You close your eyes, and for the first time in many nights, you dream. Not of her face, not of the spring, not of loss. You dream of hands, two hands, meeting in the dark and holding. That's all. And somehow it's enough. It's raining again. The kind of soft, continuous rain that doesn't change the rhythm of the day but deepens it like a basso continuo beneath the silence. You move through the abbey with soaked hems and dripping sleeves, the weight of the water pulling you ever so slightly downward, as if gravity is conspiring with grief. You are sweeping the corridor outside the scriptorium when you see it. A flower. Not wild this time, but deliberate. A small anemone, white, nearly translucent, tucked into the narrow crack between two stones near the base of the window. Anemone. The flower of longing. You bend down slowly, your heart thudding with old habits. You pluck it, press it to your lips, then slide it into your robe. No one sees. No note this time. No thread. Just the bloom. It could be nothing. But you know better. That night, you sit alone in the garden and think about the language you and she created without ever speaking a word. A whole lexicon of glances, gestures, petals, objects placed just so. It was more than code, it was communion. It was the closest you've come to being truly seen. You remember once in the early days she dropped a sprig of thyme at your feet and walked away. You didn't understand then. Later you read that thyme meant courage. Or grief. Sometimes both. You wonder what this anemone means now. Renewed, longing farewell. The rain has softened the soil in the garden bed, so you find yourself drawn to them. You kneel and begin to plant the rosemary sprig she once left you. It's still alive, barely, its roots dry but determined. You break the soil with your fingers and place it in gently as though tucking a child into bed. Brother Mateo watches from the colonnade. You don't acknowledge him. He doesn't interrupt. But you notice as you leave that he later places a stone near the plant. Flat, oval, unmarked. You think it's his way of saying, I saw. And I remember. Historians still argue about monastic gardens. Were they for medicine, beauty, or symbolism? Most agree they were layered with meaning. Roses for martyrdom. Lilies for purity. Rue for regret. But the monks never labeled anything. You had to know, you had to feel, like everything else here. Your work shifts that week. You're moved to the laundry cellar where steam curls around rafters and the scent of lye clings to your skin long after you leave. The chores are brutal, boiling linen, scrubbing blood from altar cloths, mending torn cassocks. But something about the rhythm feels good. Punishment and purification blur in the steam. One afternoon, you find a scrap of red thread in the water basin. You freeze. It's short. Barely the length of a fingernail, but you know it's hers. She's nearby. Somehow still. It could mean she was here, or someone wants you to think she was. Either way, your heart stirs. You wrap the thread around your finger and hold it there until your skin turns pale beneath it. Later in your cell, you unroll your bundle of secret items. The feather, the violet, the spoon carving of her silhouette. You add the red thread to the collection, tucking it into the carved wood figure's hand. It fits. You stare at the figure for a long while. She has no eyes, no mouth, no name. Just form. Just memory. Just enough. One of the younger monks, Brother Augustine, begins to sit near you during meals. He doesn't speak, of course, but he seems to sense the weight you carry. He shares his bread with you sometimes, places extra cheese on your tray, a subtle kindness. You nod your thanks, grateful beyond words. Literally. He gives you something else one day. A small slip of parchment folded with care. You open it. A drawing. Not a flower, not a face, but a bee. And beneath it, in tiny script, they always find their way home. You don't know what to make of it, but it makes your chest hurt in a way that's not altogether unpleasant. You press the parchment against the warm stone wall of your cell and leave it there. A kind of icon, a votive offering, not to God, but to something softer, something human. That night you dream of bees, thousands of them, swarming in golden spirals around you, humming a song that sounds just like her. And you weirdly aren't afraid. You reach out your hand and they land on your fingers' wings, flickering like breath. When you wake, your cell smells faintly of honey. You don't tell anyone. No one would believe it. But you believe. You have to. Because silence without belief is just emptiness. And you are truly trying to fill yours with meaning. The world outside the cloister has begun to change. You feel it in the air, warmer winds from the south, birds arriving earlier than usual, and clouds that no longer threaten rain but seem content to drift. Spring is no longer a theory. It has arrived. Inside, life continues in its loop. Prayer work, silence, and sleep. But you've started noticing the pauses between things more acutely. The moments when the silence doesn't feel holy but hollow. When you look up during lauds and realize you're mouthing the words now, not just thinking them. Is that a violation or a survival? You clean candle stubs from the altar, scraping wax from stone with an old copper knife. You stare into the burn marks like scrying symbols. You think of her fingers placing that anemone beneath the window crack. You wonder if she passed through this chapel too. Did she kneel here? Did she light a candle? You dare to imagine her touching the same brass railing? Your hand rests on now, it makes your skin prickle. Later in the cloister garden, you discover something new. A row of tiny mushrooms growing beneath the rosemary you planted. Just a few, pale, delicate, almost glowing in the shaded earth. You kneel, brush your fingers through the soil gently. You don't remove them. You leave them to grow. Sometimes growth is better left untouched. Brother Mateo joins you after supper. He stands nearby as you sweep fallen blossoms into a pile. Then, without ceremony, he drops a folded square of cloth beside your broom. It's hers. You know it instantly. A kerchief. Embroidered at the edge with a faded red thread, just a tiny stitched bee. You hold it like a relic. He speaks again. Only 2 words this time. She left. You want to ask everything? Where and why was she safe? Did she choose to go? Did she look back but you remain still? You give him a single nod. It is enough. That night in your cell you lay the cloth in your straw pillow and stare at it until sleep takes you. You dream of a road winding stony lined with poppies, and her figure walking ahead, never looking back but never too far to follow. The next day you start carving again, not in secret, not in the cellar, in the open, in the chapel garden on an old bench no one uses anymore. You carve vines, leaves, a face you don't try to make exact, just a soft shape, rounded cheeks, laughing eyes. You carve a hand reaching out, not to take, just to touch, just to prove the other exists. The abbot walks past once, pauses, says nothing, then keeps walking. Historians still debate how much leniency medieval abbots gave to monks who wandered from strict obedience. In some orders, minor offenses were overlooked if they came with renewed humility. Others sent men to remote priories to live out their days in isolation. But here now, the rules feel more like fog than iron. You finish the carving over 3 days. When it's done, you sit with it. You don't pray, you don't chant, you just sit, letting it speak for you. One morning, Brother Augustine slips you a small pouch. You open it to find beeswax scented faintly with thyme and pine. A balm. You use it on your carving, rub it gently into the wood. It soaks in slowly, warming the shape, deepening the grain. The figure looks alive now. You feel something like relief. You place the finished carving beneath the chapel bell tower in the alcove, where the old bells used to hang before they cracked. It's a quiet corner, half shadow, half light. No one will likely find it, but someone might. One day, that evening during Vespers as the chant echoes low, and even you feel a presence settle beside you. Not physically, but undeniably. It is her, not the girl. But what she left in you. The part that learned how to hold silence and still be full. The part that knows love doesn't need to shout to be heard. You close your eyes and for a moment the weight you've carried presses down just enough to remind you it's real, but not enough to break you. You survive it. You survive her absence. You survive yourself. And maybe that is enough. There's a rhythm to the healing now. It's not dramatic. Not some divine revelation with trumpets and sunlight. No visions, no tears. Just small movements, slow, steady, unglamorous. You scrub floors, you chop herbs, you tend to the bees again, and this time their humming doesn't sound like morning. It just sounds like bees. One morning you return to the garden and see the rosemary bush you planted thriving. It has doubled in size, pale blossoms curling up toward the sun. The mushrooms are gone now, but in their place a new cluster of wild violets, deep purple and almost defiant. You kneel before them, brush the petals with your fingers. You feel not joy exactly, but calm, a kind of quiet gladness. You're allowed back into the scriptorium this week. No explanation. Just a glance from the abbot and a subtle nod. A door left open. A seat once again waiting at the long desk. Your tools exactly as you left them, except now they feel lighter in your hands. You sit down. You breathe. You begin. The manuscript before you is worn, the ink faded, the parchment yellowed. A collection of early monastic prayers. As you copy the Latin script line by line, you realize your calligraphy has changed. It's more fluid, less rigid. Like your hand has forgotten how to be tense. One passage catches your eye. What could not be spoken must still be lived. You smile. Just barely. But it's real. You spend the afternoon illustrating the margins, floral borders, soft vines curling leaves. A tiny bee here. A wildflower there. No faces. No saints. Just nature. Life. Brother Mateo walks past your desk. He doesn't stop, but he lays a fresh quill beside your elbow. The gesture is simple, but your chest warms at the silent kindness. In the refectory, Brother Augustine still sits beside you. He doesn't share cheese anymore. Now he shares silence. And you find that somehow even more generous. Historians still argue about the emotional interiority of monastic life. Did monks feel as deeply as we do now? Or were their hearts muted by structure and devotion? The truth is, the deeper you sink into this world, the more you realize emotions didn't disappear. They just learned to live underground, like roots, like prayers. You receive a parcel 1 week later, left in your cell. No note. Inside a bundle of sage wrapped in linen, and a small scrap of blue ribbon, the kind used in village dresses. Her dress, perhaps. Or someone else's. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it wasn't forgotten. She still thinks of you, somewhere. You light the sage slowly that night, its scent curling like smoke in the corners of your cell. You do not chant. You do not speak. You simply sit and let it fill the space you used to reserve for ache. Your dreams are quiet now, not gone, just softer. She appears sometimes, but not always in the center. Sometimes just in the background, hanging linens or walking barefoot on moss. Sometimes her voice hums without a body. Sometimes it's just the color of her ribbon drifting behind your closed eyes. One morning, as you clean the chapel candlesticks, the abbot approaches. He stands beside you in silence for a long time. Then, without preamble, he speaks. You've changed. You don't nod. You don't smile. But you meet his eyes. He adds, the silence didn't break you. Still, you say nothing. But in your stillness, there's a reply. He places his hand gently on your shoulder. And for the first time since your first day in the cloister, it feels like a blessing instead of a weight. You stay in the chapel after he leaves. You light a candle for her. And a second smaller one for the version of yourself you buried to survive. You say nothing, but you do something else. You sing. Just one note. Barely audible, not even a word. Just tone, breath and pitch and feeling. The chapel does not collapse. The walls do not groan. But your ribs loosen, and your heart long a clenched fist opens a little. Not to shout. Not to run. Just to exist. In peace. You rise each morning with the sun, now not from obligation, but from some inner pull. The bell still rings, of course, but you're always already dressed, hands folded, sandals tied. The silence is no longer a discipline you wear like armor. It's become something else. A friend, a mirror, a soft echo that answers not with sound, but with steadiness. Your time in the scriptorium grows richer. You're given more difficult texts, now illuminated manuscripts worn thin by centuries of prayer and smudged fingers. One morning, you're handed a damaged copy of the Lives of the Saints. The binding is fragile, the margins riddled with corrections and ink blotches. As you restore the faded lettering, your eyes land on the tale of Saint Dymphna, a woman who fled everything family safety status for the sake of something undefinable conviction, perhaps. Or survival, or love. The scribe who wrote this copy centuries ago has added a note beside her name. She held her truth in silence, and was burned for it. You pause. You touch the note with your thumb, and you wonder how many saints carried love beneath their cassocks. How many martyrs were simply people with hearts that didn't know how to tame? You find another story in the same volume, Saint Pelagia, a woman of the stage who abandoned luxury to live in a cave as a hermit. Historians still argue whether she was a mystic or simply weary of being watched. Her silence too became legend. You begin to copy her likeness in the margins. Not with full detail, just the arch of a back, the silhouette of curls beneath a veil, a small dove beside her hand. It feels familiar. You realize with quiet certainty that many of these saints were not so different from you. Not because they were holy, but because they were lonely. In the cloister garden, the rosemary bush has begun to bloom wildly. Bees gather in lazy arcs around the blossoms. You spend an hour just watching them, no task, no purpose, just presence. A few land on your arm. You don't brush them away. You let them move across your skin like living prayers. That afternoon, you walk the edge of the cloister wall. You haven't done that in weeks. Your sandals crunch softly on gravel as you approach the old spot. The path that once led to the spring, the one overgrown now with ivy and bramble. You don't go through it, but you stand there for a long time, just remembering the first glimpse of her. The notes tucked beneath bark. The feather, the cloth, the red thread. You think of her hands rough from work but delicate when she handed you that stone with the scratched moon on it. And then you do something you haven't done since that day beneath the ash tree. You whisper her name again, this time with no fear, just reverence. The breeze picks up, rustling the ivy. You half laugh at yourself, at the thought that maybe she hears it, wherever she is. Back in your cell, you retrieve your carvings, all of them. You line them up on your floor one by one. The first is clumsy, uneven. The last smooth, patient, softened by time. You don't cry, you smile. Then you begin to wrap them in cloth. Not to hide them, to offer them. You take them to the Abbey's small reliquary, the side chapel where relics are kept beneath glass and gold. It's mostly forgotten now. No pilgrims come here. The saints inside are too obscure, too regional. But the room is still sacred. You place your carvings gently beneath the altar table. No one sees you. No one has to. You whisper a single word as you leave. Stay. Because part of you must. Part of you always will. Historians still argue whether anonymous works in abbey reliquaries were devotional or heretical. Some call them soul fragments. Others believe they were acts of quiet rebellion. But you know this when the heart is not allowed to speak, the hands will. And yours have spoken beautifully. That night during Compline, you look up at the high stained glass windows. One of the angels has a cracked wing. You've seen it 100 times, but tonight it catches your breath. It's not a flaw, it's a story, a history, a wound turned luminous by light. You close your eyes and let the chant wrap around you like linen. You feel her in the quiet, not a ghost, not a pain, just a warmth. A season you once lived through. and survived. Spring ripens into summer, and with it, the abbey exhales. The days stretch long and golden. Bees drift drowsily over the lavender. The fountain in the cloister splashes louder than before, not because the water's changed, but because your ears are no longer full of longing. The silence remains, but now it carries less weight. It feels companionable, even generous, like a blanket instead of a chain. One morning, Brother Augustine finds you beneath the yew tree eyes, closed hands folded in your lap. He sits beside you. He doesn't speak, he never has around you, but he holds out a small object. You open your hand. A sandal. Miniature carved from olive wood. You blink confused. Then it clicks. You taught him. Without teaching. Somehow your silence passed in the language of your hands. Of carving, of memory turned tangible. You chuckle an actual sound, soft and warm. He grins proud. That afternoon you return to the library. The abbot gives you a new assignment, a dusty box of unlabeled pages and torn bindings. Manuscripts damaged by time rats or perhaps neglect. Among the fragments you find something unexpected. A single parchment bearing your own script. You don't remember writing it, but the strokes are unmistakably yours. The flourishes. The half-looped S, the slanted A. It's a reflection on silence. What the mouth cannot say, the body carries. What the body cannot hold, the hand releases. And what the hand cannot release, love holds until it dissolves. You wrote this. When? Was it during the fever? During the worst of it, you sit back stunned. Not by the words, but by the fact that you're capable of forgetting and still being true. You copy it again carefully onto new parchment, this time adding vines in the margin and a small figure walking along them, a silent pilgrim. You store the original in the reliquary behind the carvings. Let it rest. Let someone else find it in another 100 years. Historians still argue whether he existed. That's what they'll write about you one day. You, the silent monk who left carvings and cryptic margin notes, whose name appears in no court records, no lists of punished heretics, only fragments, traces, slivers of devotion too tender to erase. Some will say you were invented, a metaphor for longing. Others will point to your handwriting, to the violet still pressed in your breviary, and say, no, he was real. He lived. He loved. You tend to the garden now as though it were a cloister of its own. The rosemary bush is thriving taller than your waist. You've started naming the bees, not aloud, of course, but in your mind. One is called Clement. Another, wild and fast, is called Mercy, the one with the torn wing. You name her Benedetta. You whisper these names to yourself as they land on your skin, as they sip from the blossoms. They're not prayers, not quite. Just acknowledgments of life, of softness, of the fact that everything, even silence, is alive if you listen hard enough. At Vespers, the chant begins to feel like breathing. Not recitation, but exhalation. As if the whole abbey is sighing in harmony. You hum beneath your breath, just a thread of sound. No one hears it, but you feel it. A quiet thread tying you to yourself. That night you light a candle in your cell. Not for her. Not even for you. For all the unnamed lovers who lived in silence. You imagine them scribes, nuns, apprentices, heretics across centuries, all holding their tenderness like hidden flames. You set the candle in the window, not as a beacon, but as a memory. You lie back on your straw mattress, arms folded, and think about her face, no longer sharp with ache, but softened at the edges like something remembered too often. A silhouette in the fog. A laugh behind glass. You don't need to see her again. You don't need to find her. Because she was never just a girl. She was proof that even here behind stone and vow and silence, your heart still moved. Still chose. Still loved. And in the end, that was the loudest thing of all. The days begin to slip by with the soft, indistinct rhythm of contentment. Not joy, not ecstasy, those are too loud. What you feel now is closer to moss. Quiet. Slow growing. Alive in ways only patient things understand. You are no longer watched. Brother Mateo nods to you now with something that borders on respect. Brother Augustine hums your carved melodies as he works the soil. Even the abbot, when he passes, gives you a long glance that no longer scans for guilt, but maybe, just maybe, for wisdom. One afternoon, while you were sorting herbs in the shaded apothecary room, a novice asks to help. He's no older than 14. His name is Sylvan. He smells like vinegar and fear. His hands shake when he tries to tie the rosemary sprigs. You don't speak, but you press his hand gently, guide the motion once, and let him try again. He succeeds. You nod. His face lights up. You remember the first time someone looked at you that way, not with suspicion, but with trust. It was her. At the spring, when she handed you the feather and waited, not for words, but for understanding. Historians still debate the presence of novices in silent orders. Some claim they weren't allowed until fully professed. Others argue younger boys were brought in early to mold them. Whatever the truth, Sylvan is here now, and you feel in some strange way responsible for him. You teach him to mix salves, to fold parchment, to tell them from marjoram with his nose alone. He watches you like a page watches a quill. He doesn't speak either, not from vow, but from shyness. You hope one day his silence will be choice, not fear. In the evenings you return to the reliquary. You don't add new carvings, you sit among them. You light a candle. Sometimes you hum, and sometimes not often you speak. Just a word or two. The names of saints. A line of scripture. Once when you were alone and it was raining, you said her name again. Just once. Just to remind yourself you still could. Her name does not haunt you anymore, it rests. Like a stone smoothed by water. You wonder where she is now, if she's married. If she hums your songs. If she walks to the spring and remembers your face. Or if perhaps she's taken another path entirely, one with cities and colors and markets and children. You hope so. You hope she laughs often. One day Sylvan brings you a book from the library. I thought you'd like this, he whispers, then flushes red. You take it. It's a volume of mystic writings. Mostly Julian of Norwich and Hildegard of Bingen. Women who heard voices, who saw visions, who wrote as though God was a love letter. You open to a random page and find this all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. You close the book and place your hand over your chest. Yes, you believe that now. You didn't before. In the garden, the bees have built a new hive in the far wall. No one disturbs it. You sit nearby and listen to them work. Sometimes you think the whole world is stitched together by bees. Not kings, not priests. Bees and flowers and stubborn rosemary bushes that grow despite the stones. One night a storm rolls in. Thunder shakes the chapel windows. The monks gather in the nave to pray. The abbot invites you to lead the opening line. You hesitate. Then you say it. Softly. Clearly. Dominus illuminatio mea. The Lord is my light. It echoes once gently, then folds back into silence. No one flinches. No one gasps. Because they know. They've heard your silence for so long. They know what it cost and what it meant. After the storm, you step outside. The rain has stopped. The garden glistens. And there, near the rosemary bush, is a single bee, drenched wings spread unmoving. You kneel. You cup it gently in your palms and carry it to your cell, where the candle still glows. You lay it near the warmth. And wait. 10 minutes pass. Then 15. Then movement. A twitch of leg. A flutter. The bee rights itself. It crawls onto your finger, then takes off, vanishing into the dark gold and stubborn. You smile? Because that's what you are now, not healed, but drying. Wings slowly opening. Ready perhaps to return to the world. One flight at a time. By late summer, the abbey slows its breath. The gardens grow thick and tangled. Tomatoes burst on the vine. The lavender begins to dry into brittle perfume. Birds nest in the corners of the stone eaves, their cries a chorus you've come to anticipate like a daily benediction. Even the silence seems softer now, as if it too has grown full and ripe. You wake earlier than the bell now. Out of habit, not duty. The sun touches your cell wall with gold before it rises over the hills. You sit quietly and sip warm water steeped with mint leaves. It's a small luxury, but you treat it like communion. This morning you feel the pull again. The pull toward the path. The spring. You haven't gone there since the last time since you found the bundle of rosemary, since you said goodbye with your silence. But now something tugs at you, not like longing, but like gravity. You move through the garden, through the gate in the back wall, past the old yew tree where she once brushed your sleeve with her fingertips. The path is almost gone, choked by vines and time, but you find it. Because you always would. You walk slowly, feeling the air shift as you enter the trees. The sound changes. Your breath becomes the only rhythm. Your steps are muffled. The branches hold the sun at bay. And then you see it. The spring. Still clear, unchanged. It looks smaller than you remember. Or maybe you've grown. There's no one there. You didn't expect there would be. But something waits. Beneath the ash tree, half buried in moss, is a small wooden figure. Yours? One of your carvings. You didn't place it here. You kneel beside it, fingers trembling. It's her hand carved, and yours. The two figures not touching but reaching. Your heart lurches. She returned. At some point. Maybe months ago, maybe just yesterday. She returned. And she left this not as a message, not as a question, but as a gift. You sit there for a long time, letting the quiet wash over you. Letting the water reflect the parts of yourself you forgot still shimmered. Historians still argue whether love could survive monastic vows, whether intimacy outside speech, outside touch, outside even presence was possible. They talk of sublimation, of spiritual devotion, of pious metaphor, but they never talk about this. About the sacred act of simply remembering someone. Not idolizing, not possessing, just remembering. And loving still. You don't take the carving. You leave it where she left it. Two figures, still reaching, but rooted now in moss and rain. You return to the abbey with dirt under your fingernails and a peace you haven't felt in years. You pass Brother Mateo on the path and nod. He nods back. No questions, no judgment. He understands. In the scriptorium, you begin a new manuscript. Not a gospel, not a saint's life. Your own, or something close. It's not signed, it never will be. But it begins with a single line: he loved in silence and was loved in return. You write slowly, carefully, interweaving the vines along the margin. Tiny bees in the corners. A spring beneath the text, and above it all, two silhouettes, one kneeling. one standing drawn so faintly they might fade with time. But that's all right. You're not writing for the future. You're writing to remember that you lived, that you felt, that once beneath the vows and the silence your heart beat against another's rhythm, and it made music. The manuscript grows day by day, not under instruction, not for approval, just for you. You work on it in the in-between hours after compline before the bell, when the abbey feels like a held breath. You keep it tucked beneath a floorboard in your cell between an old psalter and a cracked beeswax candle. No one asks about it, and if they did, you suspect you wouldn't lie. You'd just show them a page, and let them decide what it meant. One evening while you're in the garden, Brother Augustine joins you. He's grown more confident now. He speaks softly, not often, but when he does, his words fall like petals rare and full of color. He asks, "Have you ever loved?" The question is not an intrusion. It is a kindness. You do not answer aloud. Instead, you pluck a single violet from the edge of the rosemary bed and place it in his hand. He nods and says nothing more. Historians still puzzle over the way medieval monks communicated their deepest truths without ever breaking silence. They debate whether such subtle gestures could truly convey emotion, or whether they've romanticized centuries of restraint. But you know the truth when you're not allowed to speak. Everything else becomes a language. That night you return to the reliquary again. You dust it, straighten it, light each candle with reverence. It has become your chapel within a chapel. You find yourself kneeling before your own carvings, not in worship, in recognition. You are no longer mourning her absence. You are remembering her presence. And there's a world of difference in that. You take out one carving, the last one you made. A figure standing not alone, but in a field of bees. The face is yours, more or less. The posture upright, no longer bowed. You press it to your chest, then gently you place it behind the older ones. A quiet closing chapter. Days pass, then weeks. One morning you are summoned to the abbot's quarters. You're not afraid. You bow as you enter. He gestures to a bench. You sit. There's a scroll on the table between you. He unrolls it. It's a list of transfers. Brothers being moved to other monasteries, sent to begin new work to join smaller orders in distant hills. Your name is among them. You look up. He says simply, "You've done your time here." A pause. Then, and perhaps, "Your silence has taught us more than our sermons." He gives you a choice. Go to the new priory, a place smaller, quieter, needing hands like yours. Or remain here, in comfort, in routine, in memory. You take a day to decide. That evening in the cloister, you sit beneath the stars. You write a single line in your manuscript. To love in silence is not to be forgotten. It is to become a part of what grows. You smile, and you make your decision. You will go, not to escape, but to carry this piece forward, to pass it on. The morning you leave, the monks gather. No ceremony, just presence. Brother Matteo places a carved bee in your satchel. His work, not yours. Brother Augustine hugs you, briefly, fiercely. Even the abbot clasps your forearm before you step beyond the gate. You walk, sandals soft on the path. The same path you once crept along in secret, now walked in full light. You pass the spring. You stop. The carving is still there. Weather-worn now. Moss growing on the edges. You do not disturb it. You bow to it, then move on. As you walk, the silence walks with you. Not behind you like a shadow, but beside you. A companion. A love you no longer fear to hold. And in the far distance, though unseen though, perhaps imagined you feel her, living her life, in her way, with her own kind of quiet. And maybe, just maybe, when she stops to gather herbs or hums to herself, or dips her feet into a stream, she thinks of you. Not with sadness, not with ache, but with warmth and a smile, just like yours. The road to the new priory winds through hills, dappled with olive trees and silver grasses. You walk alone, carrying little a satchel with your breviary, a water flask, a carved bee, and the manuscript. The air tastes different here, cleaner, somehow touched with salt, from a sea you haven't seen yet but feel tugging faintly on the breeze. The silence around you isn't monastic, it's natural. Birds call out. Insects hum. The wind rustles low in the wheat. But none of it asks for a reply. You feel at home in this kind of sound. Not disturbed by it, completed by it. You pass small stone chapels on the way, abandoned ones, oratories left to the elements. In one you pause to sit. There's nothing inside but shadows and crumbling icons. But still you kneel, not because it's required, because it feels right. You'd light a candle from your pack and place it in the window. Then leave. Let someone else find it. Let someone else wonder. The priory is smaller than your former abbey, tucked between orchards and terraced hills. It houses no more than 12 monks. Their eyes are gentle, their movements slow. They greet you with bows and the warm, brief touch of hands on shoulders. No one asks your story. They see it in your eyes. They hear it in the way you move. You're given a room that smells faintly of lavender and ink. A window faces east, framing the dawn like a painting. You unpack slowly, deliberately. You place the carved bee on the sill. You fold the manuscript and slip it beneath your cot where dreams and old truths tend to rest. Your duties here are simple. Transcription, garden work, a bit of beekeeping. The bees here are calmer, perhaps sensing the stillness you carry. You tend to them like old friends, no fear, no gloves, just breath and patience. You speak once early in your stay. A new novice drops a vial of oil and apologizes with wide, wet eyes. You kneel beside him, pick up a shard of glass, and say softly, "It's just glass." He stares, then smiles. You return to silence. But the words hang in the air long after, not as a rupture, but as a bridge. You realize then your silence is no longer a vow. It's a choice. It's yours now, and you will share it when needed, or keep it when not. In the evenings, you begin a new project. Not another manuscript, a garden, a real one, a space for herbs, flowers, fruit trees, but also for memory. You choose plants deliberately. Rosemary, of course. Lavender. Sage. Violets. And near the back, tucked between two low walls, you plant a small sapling ash tree. The monks help you dig the hole. Brother Elias, a wiry man with a cough that sounds like laughter, asks, "Why ash?" You shrug, then trace two reaching figures in the dirt with your finger. He nods. "Nice," he says, and pats your shoulder. You sit beside that tree often. In time, others begin to join you, not to speak, just to sit. It becomes known as the Silent Garden, and in the Priory's record book, someone draws a small bee next to your name. No explanation, just a symbol. Some weeks later, you write a letter. Your first in years. It's not addressed, you don't even sign it. But it reads, "I remembered your tune today, the one you hummed by the spring. I've started planting again. I think you'd like the garden. The ash tree is strong. The bees are kind. I hope you're smiling somewhere." I am. You fold it, you burn it. The smoke curls upward like incense vanishing into the dusk. And in that dusk, as the bells toll for vespers, you feel something that surprises you. Not grief, not longing, but gratitude. For the silence. For the love. For having held both. The ash tree in your garden grows faster than expected. Its branches stretch upward eagerly as if chasing the bells, the bees, or maybe just the light. You water it each morning before prayer, pressing your hand against its thin trunk as if listening for her. You half expect it to hum. The garden, once tidy, has taken on a beautiful wildness. Violets creep between the stones. Rosemary bushes grow with soft defiance. Sage sprawls like a cat in the sun. A few monks have added their own plants. Figs, lemon balm, wild thyme. It is no longer just your space. It belongs to everyone. And that too feels right. Sylvan the young novice writes poetry now. Short, awkward verses scratched into parchment margins. He leaves them for you on the edge of your desk. You never comment, but you save each one. Folded neatly, tucked beside your manuscript. One reads, "The monk who says nothing, sees everything bloom. Even silence has roots." You don't cry when you read it, but you close your eyes and hold it against your chest. One morning you return from prayer and find a bundle waiting on your cot, tied with twine, wrapped in linen, inside a small leather pouch filled with dried lavender, and a folded note, written in a hand not yours. Neat, delicate. It says she passed through this valley months ago. She asked if a quiet monk had come this way. She said nothing more, only smiled. You stare at the paper for a long time, then fold it carefully and place it in your breviary behind Psalm 139. You hem me in behind and before. You step outside into the morning sun. The bees are already busy. You open your arms, palms up, and take a long breath of air touched with rosemary and memory. She was near. That is enough. You return to your manuscript. You add a page. It is not a prayer, not a story, just a single line. She remembered. You underline it once, and draw a red thread curling around it. Historians still argue whether these kinds of inscriptions were personal or symbolic. Whether the monks wrote them as allegory or as hidden fragments of forbidden feeling. The truth, of course, is both. All symbols come from something real. You teach Sylvan to carve now. Your hands guide his. You speak softly when necessary, not often, but enough. He's better than you were at his age. His first piece is a bee. You hang it in the garden on a nail driven into the ash tree's bark. It swings slightly in the breeze like it might take flight at any moment. The priory elder brother Honorius sees the garden and smiles. "This is your cloister now," he says. You bow your head humbled and accept it, because it's true. You no longer live behind stone and vow. You live among things that grow, things that hum, things that live and die and return again. That's what you are now, not a relic, but a root. Deep, quiet, steady. One evening while watering the fig tree, you look up at the hills. The sun is falling behind them in streaks of copper and crimson. You remember the first time you met her eyes, the hush of the spring, the feather, the red thread. It doesn't hurt anymore. It glows. You sit beneath the ash tree and open your manuscript to the last page. You draw two figures, side by side, no longer reaching, but walking toward the horizon. You don't add faces, just hands linked. Then for the first time, you sign your name. Just initials, underlined once. I.S. You press your palm to the parchment, then close the book, and smile. Because the story yours, hers, theirs is not over. It's just begun to live beyond words. Autumn arrives with its golden hush. The hills roll in amber and rust. Leaves drift like old stories let go of too late. The bees slow their flights fat with summer's final nectar, their hum now a lullaby instead of a song. You walk through the priory garden with the steady hand and softer footsteps. Everything is quieter, even you. The ash tree has shed its first leaves. You gather a few of them, just the brightest, and press them into the back of your manuscript, not as decoration, as remembrance. You have taken to walking beyond the walls lately. Small paths, nothing daring, just circles around the orchard, the stream, the mossy rock where mushrooms bloom in moonlight. You feel no compulsion to wander farther. The distance you used to crave has shifted inward. Now your greatest pilgrimage is from your cell to the garden, and that's enough. Brother Honorius begins preparing his own retirement. He's old bones thin as parchment, but his eyes still shine. One morning he finds you beneath the grape arbor and sits beside you. He holds out a small wooden cross. "Carved this when I was your age," he says. "No one ever wanted it. You take it." He pats your shoulder. "Maybe it was always meant for someone like you." You nod. He smiles. Then he adds, "Your silence teaches more than my sermons ever did." You look away, but not in shame, just in humility. In the weeks that follow, you're asked to take on more guidance roles, helping new initiates, leading the garden schedule, overseeing the apothecary herbs. You never speak much, but your presence is steady, like weather or stone. One night, a traveling monk visits the priory. Dusty boots, thin cloak, ink on his fingers. He brings with him manuscripts to trade. Among them is a thin volume titled The Quiet Brother, A Legend of the Valleys. You freeze when you see it. Your hands tremble as you turn the pages. Inside are carvings you recognize your own, copied, shared, paired with poetic retellings of your story. Or someone's story. It's not entirely accurate. They've made you into a ghost, a myth. The monk who carved love into wood and left his voice in the hands of bees. You don't feel anger, only awe, because somehow your silence echoed. Long after. Long enough. You ask if you can keep the copy. The traveling monk shrugs. I brought it for that reason. Later that night, you tuck it beside your manuscript. Two truths side by side, the one you lived and the one the world imagined. You understand now both matter. Historians still argue whether legends are built on fact or need. Whether these whispered saints and silent lovers ever walked the earth, or were simply shaped by those who needed them to. But you have walked, and you have loved, and that is enough. On the eve of the feast of St. Francis, the monks gather around a fire in the garden. They sing. You don't join not with voice, but you hum. Quietly, until Brother Augustine nudges you. Your turn, he whispers. You shake your head. He grins. You've already sung more than most men ever do. You pass him a small carving, a hand, open, empty. He takes it like a relic. The night air cools. You sit beneath the ash tree. You trace the initials in your manuscript one more time. I.S. You don't know if they'll last. Parchment fades, wood rots, bees die. But somewhere in the hush of a spring, in the hum of a hive, in the pressed flowers of a breviary forgotten in an attic, you will be, not in voice, not in legend, but in the roots, and in the quiet that love left behind. The first frost arrives overnight, turning the garden silver. You wake to find the rosemary branches dusted with white like powdered sugar on holy bread. The ash tree stands bare now, its last few leaves curled at its feet like pages torn from a letter you never sent. You gather them gently. not to preserve them, to thank them. There is something sacred in what falls away. You're tending to the beehives when Brother Augustine appears, hands tucked in his sleeves, breath puffing in little clouds. "They've slowed," he says, watching the bees move sluggishly around the hive entrance. You nod. "They'll sleep soon," he adds softly. You look up. He means more than the bees. You feel it. There's a hush in the priory now that wasn't there before, the kind that comes not from discipline but from peace. The novices are calm, the monks are kind. No one jostles, no one rushes. It's as if the silence you once struggled under has bloomed around you, and settled. You return to your manuscript that evening. Its pages are nearly full now. Not just with reflections, with seasons, moments. Fragments of thought that would have been lost had you not caught them in ink. You write about the color of frost on figs, the weight of a candle after a long prayer, the way bees navigate memory. You pause over a new page and write a simple line. I have learned that silence is not the absence of love, but its most honest shape. You underline it twice. Then close the book. It's done. You place it in the reliquary the next morning, not hidden, not displayed, just resting, like you. You continue to walk the garden daily. The ash tree, though bare, is taller than ever, stronger, its roots deeper. You begin writing short phrases on stones now, leaving them at its base. One says, "She was never lost." Another, "I kept my vow." A third, "I forgave myself." The others begin adding their own. The base of the ash becomes a shrine not of doctrine, but of memory. Historians still debate whether small monastic gardens ever served as personal confessionals, whether monks found ways to externalize their inner worlds without speaking a word. There's no firm proof, just rumors, stories, hints in the margins of old texts. But here now, you know the truth. Every leaf, every root, every carved bee is a confession. The priory becomes known for its garden. Pilgrims arrive, not many, just a few drawn by stories. The monks don't advertise it. They don't turn it into spectacle. They simply welcome the visitors and invite them to sit, to walk, to breathe, to be. One young woman leaves a ribbon at the ash tree. Red. It flutters in the wind. You do not ask her name. You don't need to. You smile. The silence is no longer about restraint. It is about room, space to feel, to remember, to forgive, to love again and again and again. Brother Honorius leaves in winter. His cart creaks softly over the frost-hardened path. Before he goes, he clasps your hand. Says, "You'll take my place, I suppose." You shake your head. He grins. Too humble. That's how I know you're ready. You do not speak, but your hand lingers in his. When the cart vanishes over the hill, you bow your head and whisper, "Thank you." It's the only word you speak that day, and it is more than enough. Snow falls for the first time in years. Not a dusting, but a full hush blanketing the hills. The chapel roof, the bee garden, and every stone path with soft erasure. It's as though the world has paused, holding its breath to listen. And in that pause, you find a new kind of silence, white, cold, generous. You walk the garden at dawn, sandals wrapped in cloth, each step leaving a faint imprint that's gone by evening. The ash tree wears snow like a veil. The ribbon still flutters stiff and wind-bent but visible. Someone replaced it, perhaps the woman, perhaps another silent pilgrim. Either way, its presence comforts you. You do not need to be remembered loudly, only honestly. Brother Augustine joins you later in the scriptorium. He reads now voraciously. Mystics, herbalists, Roman poets. He likes to copy their most poetic lines in the margins of blank pages and hide them in drawers. You find one next to your ink pot. Not all who keep quiet are empty. Some are full beyond language. You press it flat, fold it into a triangle, and slide it between the pages of your manuscript, even though it's finished. Finished doesn't mean closed. That afternoon you find a visitor at the priory gates. Unusual in winter. She's older now. You recognize her by her hands before her face. Same fingers. Same way of holding herself, shoulders angled as though expecting to run at any moment, yet choosing not to. She sees you and smiles without words. You smile back. No one speaks. She's wrapped in a deep blue cloak. Her eyes search your face. They don't ask. They know. You walk her through the garden slowly. The bees are dormant. The rosemary brittle with frost. The ash tree stands between you. You point to the shrine of stones beneath it. She kneels, reads a few, doesn't react, but her hand hovers above one. I forgave myself. She picks up a blank stone, looks to you. You hand her a piece of charcoal. She writes just one word, then places it carefully at the front of the pile. Peace. She stands. You offer her your hand, not as a vow breaker, as an old friend. She takes it. A single breath passes between you. And then she goes. Not fast, not slow. Just forward. You don't watch long. You sit at the base of the ash tree. Run your fingers over the stones. They're cool, firm. Truths weathered into permanence. That night you gather the monks in the chapel. No ceremony, just candlelight. You place a page on the altar. The last one you'll write for the manuscript. It reads, I saw her again. She wrote peace. And I understood what it meant for the first time. No one asks who she is. They don't need to. They kneel beside you, and for a long time, nothing moves but the flames. Historians still argue whether monks ever experienced reunion with their forbidden loves, if the rules ever bent even once in secret. Some say it's just a story. Others, those who've truly been silent, believe it. Because the heart rarely stops where the rules say it should. Especially not in winter. Especially not when snow remembers every step. The snow melts slowly like a reluctant farewell. Tiny streams carve paths through the garden soil, reawakening the rosemary and coaxing the violet bulbs to stir beneath the surface. You kneel beside the ash tree and watch the thaw and real-time ice dripping from its branches, the red ribbon, darker now soaked, but holding firm. There is water in your shoes, mud on your cuffs. You stay anyway. Sylvan brings you tea in a wooden cup, mint and chamomile. He doesn't say a word, just places it beside you, his footprints squishing softly away. You sip its steam, curling into the morning air, and close your eyes. Your memory drifts not painfully, but gently. You remember the first time you truly noticed her, not her face, but the moment she placed that note beneath the bark and looked up, knowing you'd see it. That mutual understanding, that shared silence, that moment more sacred than any psalm you've ever copied. Now you carry her memory without sharpness. It's like light reflected off water, always there, impossible to hold. In the chapel that evening, Brother Elias reads aloud from the Rule of St. Benedict. He stumbles over a line, then laughs softly and says, "It's hard to read rules with so much spring in your bones." The others chuckle. You smile. He looks at you. "Would you like to read the next line?" You pause, then shake your head. Not yet, but soon. Historians still argue whether monks ever regained their voices after years of silence. Some believe that once the vow settled into the body, it never fully left. That speech felt foreign, like using a tool you'd long since put away. Others say the voice returns softly like spring after long frost. Yours comes back in pieces. One word at a time, not in sermons, in replies. Simple ones, yes. No, thank you. More time, please. Each time you speak, the world doesn't crumble. The chapel doesn't shake. God doesn't flinch. You write less now, but you read more. Old letters, ancient prayers, herbal scrolls left behind by someone who loved plants as you do. You find one with a pressed flower faded nearly to parchment. You close the book around it and whisper, "She'd like that." You're no longer chasing her memory. You're living beside it. One morning, Brother Augustine tells you the priory has been asked to send a representative to a distant abbey for an exchange of teachings. He looks at you when he says it. It could be you. You stare at the window, at the ash tree, at the line of bees now waking again. You ask for a day to think. He nods. That night you walk the garden under the stars. You find the stone she left. Peace. You sit beside it. And in your mind you ask her, should I go? The wind doesn't answer, but a bee lands on your sleeve and stays. In the morning, you say yes. You pack lightly. The manuscript stays. The carvings stay. The garden stays. You leave your initials carved on the inside of the beehive lid. Not for fame, for memory. Brother Elias walks with you to the edge of the orchard. He says, "You'll write to us," you grin. Then speak clear and warm, only if you promise not to write back. He laughs and waves as you vanish down the sun-dappled road. The path leads you away, but never far. Because you carry everything now, not in bags, but in silence, in breath. In the long pause between two people who once reached for each other and learned finally that letting go was not the end of love, only the beginning of peace. The road to the distant abbey winds through quiet villages and fog-laced forests. You travel mostly on foot, occasionally sharing bread or a fire with shepherds or travelers who accept your silence without question. People trust a quiet man more quickly than a talkative one. Your presence calms. It fills space without pressing on it. Along the way, you visit a chapel built into a cliff. Carved out of stone, its altar is little more than a slab. Votive candles flicker even in midday. Pilgrims have scrawled prayers along the cave walls in dozens of hands. Some are requests, others are confessions. One simply says, "I loved once." That was enough. You sit beside that one for a long time and smile. When you finally reach the abbey, you are welcomed with modest ceremony. They've heard of you. Word has traveled in quiet ways. They call you Il Fratello Silenzioso, the silent brother. You do not correct them. You are not here to be known. You're here to serve. Your duties are light at first, transcribing texts, sorting herbs, walking with the old monk whose joints creak like the chapel door. He teaches you names for birds in 3 languages. You teach him the best way to calm bees. He says silence must be a comfort to them. You nod. They only sting when someone makes noise, you know, he adds with a grin. You raise an eyebrow. He winks. Historians still wonder whether cross-abbey exchanges led to doctrinal diffusion or cultural clarity. Some say monks like you brought heresy in satchels. Others say you carried peace like seed planting what others didn't even know they needed. Either way, you've become a kind of gentle contagion. The quiet you carry is welcomed here. It spreads in small ways. A novice stops speaking during meals just to see what it feels like. A scribe leaves a note instead of a question. A tired gardener starts sitting with the bees rather than driving them off. You teach no classes, but somehow they learn. You walk each morning beneath the poplar trees that edge the abbey walls. Their leaves shimmer like coins. The wind through them reminds you of her hair, her laughter, her hush, not in longing, but in gratitude. You pause beneath one tree and press your palm to the trunk, and whisper, "Thank you." You don't need to say to whom. The earth understands. On the abbey's north side, there's a tiny apothecary with an overgrown garden. You ask gently with a look if you may tend it. The answer is yes. Within days, you've coaxed the rosemary back to life. Lavender follows, then chamomile. One morning, you plant an ash sapling beside the stone wall. No one asks why, but a week later, someone leaves the stone at its base. Unmarked, but familiar. A silent acknowledgement, like all the best things. In the evenings, you sit by the library fire. You don't read, you don't write, you carve. Tiny figures, bees, hands, a tree with two roots spiraling together. You leave them on windowsills and cell nooks tucked between prayer books. Not signed, not explained, just given. One night you carve something new. Two figures walking side by side. One holds a staff, the other a ribbon. You place it in the pocket of your robe, not to give away, to keep. As a reminder that peace is not what happens after the story. Peace is the story if you choose to walk it. Winter returns with quiet grace. Not the sharp, punishing cold of years past, but a slow, thoughtful kind. The kind that allows you to reflect, to move more slowly, to breathe deeper. Snow settles into the corners of the abbey like a careful guest, softening rooftops, cloaking fields, and smoothing every stone edge you once traced with your eyes. The ash sapling you planted has survived. Its branches are bare, yes, but strong. You wrap its base in linen against the frost and leave a sprig of rosemary in the snow beside it. Not for ritual, not for memory, just to say you are not alone. In the apothecary, the shelves are now labeled. Not with names, with symbols. A violet inked onto the jar of lavender. A curled bee for honey balm. A handprint for the calendula salve. You didn't invent the system. The novices did without asking. But you understand the impulse. Sometimes silence inspires creativity more than instruction ever could. Brother Leontius, the old monk with the bird names, gives you a gift one morning, a small bound book. Blank inside. Thought you might be ready to start again. He says, his voice gruff with affection. You hold it for a moment, then smile. But do not open it. Not yet. It's enough to carry it. Historians still argue about the authorship of certain anonymous monastic texts, strange little volumes found in ruins filled with drawings, herbs, verses, and lines of startling beauty. They try to trace handwriting, ink, materials. But some things resist attribution. Some truths only live because they were given freely, and without name. In late winter, a group of pilgrims arrives. Not the usual noble converts or wealthy penitents. These are quiet folk. Shepherds, a weaver, a girl who hums when she walks, a man who signs instead of speaks. You guide them through the garden. They follow without questions. When you reach the ash tree, the girl stops and touches the bark gently. Then she hums. And it is her melody. Your breath catches. Not from sadness, but from the astonishing continuity of love. The song lives on. In the girl, in the snow, in you. That evening you finally open the blank book. And begin with this: they will call me the monk who loved in silence. Let them. But know this, my silence was never empty. It was a cathedral. You do not plan the rest. You let it come as it will. Like bees, like seasons, like her. You walk each morning now before dawn when the stars still linger like old friends who don't know when to leave. You speak softly into the frost. Not prayers, not questions. Just your breath shaped into simple truths. I forgive. I remember. I continue. The world doesn't answer. It listens. And that is enough. Sometimes Brother Augustine writes to you from your old priory. His letters are small and careful. He never names her. But he writes, the ash tree has grown a second ring. The bees came back stronger. Someone left a violet on your bench. I left it there. It belongs. You reply with drawings. A hand, a ribbon, a tree with roots entwined. No names, no dates, only knowing. One day while walking near the eastern wall, you see something new carved into the stone. A single line in uneven script I loved and I was not undone. You rest your palm against it, warm despite the cold. You close your eyes and smile, because you were not undone. You were shaped. The first crocus blooms beneath the ash tree. It surprises you, small violet, defiantly early. The snow hasn't fully melted, and yet here it is. You crouch beside it, fingers hovering near the petals without touching. That something so soft could arrive in the middle of coldness, it feels like a sermon. One you didn't need to hear but are glad was given anyway. You whisper, welcome. No one hears it, except maybe the tree. Later that day, while tending to the salves, you pause over the calendula jar. The label, the handprint drawn by one of the novices, has faded. You reach for a new parchment strip and without thinking, sketch a sprig of violet instead. It fits. Calendula heals wounds. So do early flowers. That evening, the abbey hosts a reading in the library, an old tradition revived by the younger monks. Poems are read aloud, some awkward, some surprisingly beautiful. Brother Leontius recites a Roman ode about olive trees. A novice reads a letter he wrote to a star. Another monk tells a story he heard from a shepherd, a woman who fell in love with a silent man, and who never spoke again after he left. You sit in the corner listening. You feel like an old book on a high shelf, but not forgotten, just full. When they ask if you want to share, you don't answer with words. You remove the carved figure from your pocket. The two walkers, one with a ribbon, one with a staff. You place it on the table. There is silence. Not the heavy kind, the holy kind. They understand. That night, a knock comes at your cell door. You open it to find the girl from the pilgrim group. She stands barefoot, cheeks pink from cold. She doesn't enter, just hands you something, a folded paper crinkled and warm from her pocket. Inside is a drawing, yours, copied, two figures under a tree, but now they are sitting side by side. You look up. She signs in slow, careful gestures. My mother taught me that. Then she smiles and leaves. You hold the drawing until the candle burns low. Then you place it with the others beneath the reliquary shelf where the bees used to hum in your garden far away. You dream that night of the spring of her, but differently now. She doesn't walk away. You don't chase. You simply sit, knees touching, watching bees rise into the air like golden sparks. When you wake, your pillow smells faintly of lavender. You don't question it. Some gifts do not ask to be explained. Historians still argue about visions. Were they divine or the mind's way of carrying weight too long? You no longer care. If peace visits in a dream, let it. You begin carving again, not just small pieces. Larger works now. Benches, window frames, garden markers. You carve in curves, in spirals, in patterns that resemble old songs no longer sung. You teach the novices how to listen with their hands. One writes in a journal, "He taught me to shape wood like prayer." You read it when he's not looking, you do not cry. But you do exhale deeply as if something finally settled where it belonged. The ash tree gains new ribbons. You never see who ties them. Some red, some blue. One with a pressed flower tucked into the knot. You count them on your morning walks, and one day you tie your own. Not for her, not for memory, but for everything between. You whisper as you nod it, "I am not alone." The wind tugs the ribbon once, then lets it rest. By mid-spring, the garden hums again. The bees return in full, their buzzing, a kind of music that requires no melody. Violets bloom freely between flagstones, and the ash tree wears a new skin. Thicker bark, broader shadow. You sit beneath it most mornings, fingers dusted with soil, a ribbon tied to your wrist like a reminder that some threads are not meant to be cut. You've started making tea for others, not just for yourself. It began with Sylvan's cough, a mild winter illness that lingered. You brewed him rosemary, and time added a whisper of honey, handed it to him with a small nod. He drank, smiled, and returned the next day with 3 more novices in tow. Now it's tradition. You never intended to become a figure in their lives. But here you are, they sit in a circle after compline mugs, warming their hands, watching the sun fade behind the hills. Some speak, some don't. No one forces either. It's understood that silence is welcome here and often more revealing than chatter. One evening, one of them asks, "Why do you never finish your carvings' faces?" You pause, then trace a fingertip across a half-carved cheek, and say, "Because not all stories want to be told." They go quiet, then nod. You don't explain further. You don't need to. Historians still wonder about incomplete devotional works found in quiet monasteries, icons with missing eyes, saints with blank expressions. Were they accidents, abandonments, or was it a reverence for the unknowable? You know now. Some truths are clearest in outline, in implication. Not everything should be seen to be felt. One morning a letter arrives at the abbey, addressed not to you but to the brother who listens. It's written in careful script, no signature. Inside a pressed violet, and a single sentence, "I found peace." I hope you have too. You sit with it a long time. You don't know if it's from her? It doesn't matter. It is from someone who understood, and that is enough. You press the violet between the final pages of your manuscript and write beside it, "Peace shared is peace multiplied." You take the carving of the 2 figures, your first, and place it in the chapel alcove. No announcement, no plaque, just presence. A few days later, someone leaves a candle burning before it, then another. Soon it becomes a quiet shrine, not to saints, to silence, to love lived without words, yet never lacking in fullness. You begin walking the perimeter of the abbey grounds in the evenings. A slow circuit, a ritual. It starts as habit, then becomes prayer. You pass the outer wall, the vineyard, the new hives, the ash tree. Each step memory, each breath a new chapter. One night you find Sylvan sitting near the tree. He holds a carving of his own. You sit beside him. He shows it without speaking, 2 bees curled on the same flower. He signs slowly, nervously. Does it mean anything? You smile, place a hand on his shoulder, and say softly, "Only everything." The garden quiets. The bells call for rest. You walk back together in silence, the kind that sings, the kind that is earned, the kind that no longer contains ache but presence. Spring melts into summer with an ease you've never known before. There is no drama to it this time, no jarring change, no ache in the bones. No sharp reminder of what's been lost. Just warmth. Gentle, patient warmth that fills your days like water fills a well. You spend more time barefoot now on the stone paths in the soil under the ash tree whose roots stretch longer each week. The ribbon you tied months ago has faded to pink and frays in the wind, but you leave it. It has done its work. It doesn't need to be new to be meaningful. The bees are flourishing. So much so that the hives have begun to swarm. Brother Leontius still sharp. Despite the cough that never quite went away, nods approvingly. They're thriving, like you. You raise a brow. He grins. Don't argue, you know it's true. You chuckle not loudly, but loud enough. You've begun a new manuscript, not a sequel, not a continuation, but a quiet echo. A book of aphorisms, small sayings carved from your silence like bees pulling gold from air. You write them in your slow hand, decorating the pages with vines and wings. The heart speaks best through hands. What we love cannot be erased, only rewritten in softer ink. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is planting something in the ash. Historians will never find your name attached to this work. They'll call it anonymous. They'll debate its origin. But the monks here will know. And they'll share it. Quietly, tenderly, like passing a candle in the dark. One morning you wake with the urge to return to the place where your silence began. The old abbey. You write to Brother Augustine. His reply is brief and warm. Whenever you are ready, the path is waiting, so you go. Not in secret, not in shame, but in fullness. The walk takes days. The road is familiar, but your footsteps are different now. Lighter. You stop often to rest, to breathe, to write. You visit the same cliffside chapel, the same stream, the same hollow tree. And then one dusk you arrive. The cloister is smaller than you remember, but then again you've grown. Brother Augustine meets you at the gate. He says nothing, just opens his arms, and you step into them. He leads you to the garden first. Of course. The rosemary is wild now. Lavender sprawls like a cat in sunlight. And the ash tree, your first, is tall, regal, crowned in summer green. At its base, the shrine of stones has grown. Nearly a full circle now. You find the one she wrote. Peace. Still there, still whole. You add a new one. I did. You sit beside the tree until the stars blink open. The bells toll. And you return inside. Your cell has been kept somehow, dusty but untouched. A dried violet sits on the windowsill. You sleep soundly for the first time in weeks. In the morning you rise before dawn. You walk to the spring. Yes, the path is still there, choked with green, but walkable. The water is cold. You kneel, cup it in your hands, drink, and whisper a prayer not to God, not exactly, to memory, to time, to her. Thank you. When you return to the abbey, Brother Augustine hands you a satchel. Something was left for you, he says. Years ago, you open it, inside your old carvings, all of them. Preserved, cleaned, and one you've never seen. 2 bees, 1 curled, 1 in flight. You press your hand to your chest and exhale. Because even now, especially now, your silence still speaks. And it is heard. You return to your new abbey carrying very little. Just your satchel, your breath, and that final carving, the bees one curled in, rest the other, caught mid-flight. You keep it wrapped in linen during the journey, your fingers brushing it sometimes through the cloth, like you might wake it if you're not gentle. But it isn't asleep. It's a memory, a continuation, a whispered promise. When you arrive, the garden has grown fuller still. The ash tree you planted is now casting real shade. Someone's added a bench beneath it. You sit there placing the carving between your palms and watch the bees dance through shafts of sunlight like gold dust in a cathedral. You take the carving to the reliquary not to hide it, but to nest it among the others. There beneath the shelf, where your first manuscript rests, you lay it in the bowl of a wooden hand someone else carved after you left. It fits. It always would. Sylvan finds you there. He says nothing, just kneels beside you and lights a candle. You watch the flame flicker, the wax tremble, the shadows shift. And for the first time in what feels like lifetimes, you whisper, "I'm home." He doesn't blink, just smiles. In the following days, you are quiet, yes, but not silent. You lead the novices in herb study. You teach prayer not as recitation, but as movement. How to offer thanks in the way you water time or press balm into cracked knuckles, or kneel in stillness beneath a bee-laced tree. You write again, little things, folded thoughts. You begin leaving them around the abbey, tucked into sandals slipped beneath breadboards between the pages of books. One reads, "Love when not spoken is still heard." Another, "She was never the lesson. She was the light that let me see it." No one confronts you about them, but they disappear one by one. You see one on the abbot's desk, framed between two candles. You say nothing, but your heart glows. Historians still argue whether monastic life ever allowed for transformation beyond doctrine. Whether monks truly changed or simply grew more obedient over time. But you are not more obedient. You are wider, like soil that's been tilled, like silence that now hums with the memory of a voice. You take to rising early again, even before the bees. You sit with your blank journal, not writing, just listening. Some days you write nothing at all. Other days a single sentence arrives like a visitor knocking softly. "She walked away, and I stayed." But both of us carried the garden. You begin making candles. It becomes your craft, melting wax, adding herbs, setting each one in clay cups fired in the abbey kiln. You place them all over the grounds in the chapel and the novices' quarters by the ash tree. Each one is a soft act of remembrance. Not mourning, illumination. One morning a new novice asks, "Who are the carvings for you?" Answer without hesitation. "For anyone who's ever kept something sacred and didn't know where to put it." He looks puzzled, but nods, and walks away carrying a small wooden bird you carved just last week. You smile. In the garden, the ash tree sheds a single leaf. You catch it in your palm, hold it a while, then let it go. It twirls quietly, as it should. The seasons turn without fanfare. Summer folds into autumn with the gentlest of gestures, a coolness at dawn. A golden tinge on the fig leaves a slowing of bees that now drift rather than dart. You wake to softer light through your window. You eat slower. You sleep deeper. Even time, it seems, has learned to breathe more fully around you. You spend more hours by the ash tree now. Its roots are thick enough to push gently against the garden stones, making cracks that fill with moss. The shrine of stones at its base continues to grow. One morning you find a child's drawing tucked among them, a wax crayon sketch of the tree itself, surrounded by smiling bees. There is no name. You leave it. A new novice, Terencio, has begun asking more questions than most. His mind races, his voice stumbles. But his hands are steady. You place a carving knife in his palm one afternoon. He frowns. "I've never done this before. You just point to the wood." He nods and begins. Historians may never record his name, but the window frame. He carves a month later a vine and a bee in perfect harmony will speak louder than any line of scripture he copies. You help him understand that, not with lessons, with time, patience, presence. You've come to understand something else too. You no longer grieve her. You carry her, in the carved line of every reaching hand, in the scent of rosemary crushed between your fingers, in the moment you press a beeswax candle into a novice's hand and watch his shoulders ease. She is no longer the girl at the spring. She is the silence you offer without fear, the love you still live. One evening, as twilight stains the walls, blue brother Leontius sits beside you in the garden. He's slower now, breath thinner, but his eyes gleam with the same dry fire. I think you were always meant to stay silent, he says. You smile, he adds, but now it sounds like singing. You don't answer. He knows. He reaches into his robe and pulls out something wrapped in cloth. He hands it to you. Inside, a vial of honey. Thick. Amber. Still warm from his pocket. For the bees, he says. Or for whoever still needs sweet things. You bow your head and whisper, "Thank you." You write a new line that night. Not in your manuscript. On the inside of a drawer in the apothecary. It says if you are reading this, you've already begun to listen. The next day, a stone appears beneath the ash tree. Not carved, just placed. Simple. Still, you place another beside it. You do not need to write anything on it. Sometimes the message is the act itself. The bees are slower now, gathering what remains before winter presses in. You sit beside them and hum, not a tune of hers, but something new rising from your chest without memory or effort. It feels like prayer, but not to a god. To the moment, to the bees, to the silence you've finally made a home inside. You look around and see everything growing, even as the light fades. The tree, the garden, the novices, yourself, not loudly, not quickly, but deeply. You place the vial of honey on the altar that night, lit by a single candle. No one asks why. No one needs to. You have learned how to love in silence. And now you are teaching others how to listen in kind. The first frost arrives quietly, brushing the garden with silver. You step outside before dawn, your breath a soft fog. The ash tree gleams beneath a lace of ice. Its leaves are almost gone now, but the trunk stands firm, the bark dark with dew. You touch it gently with your palm and feel the heartbeat of winter beginning. The bees are gone to sleep. The hives are still and silent. But you know they live deep inside, curled in warmth and memory. You wrap the hives in cloth and pine branches as you've done every year. The scent fills the air sharp and clean, and you smile, remembering how she once tied pine needles into her hair during a festival and laughed when you stared too long. The memory doesn't sting anymore, it glows. Later, you gather the novices in the scriptorium. It's warmer there, filled with candles and the scent of melting wax. You've prepared a new practice, not writing, not carving, but listening. You instruct them to close their eyes and hold a blank page. Write nothing you say softly, just feel. They hesitate but obey. The room hushes. No quills scratch. Only breathing. After a time you whisper, "This is where love begins." Not with ink, but with pause. Sylvan opens his eyes first. He smiles. Tears shining. He gets it. Historians still question the role of silence in early monasteries. Was it discipline or something more? Was it denial, or did it offer a gateway to truths language could never reach? You've lived the answer. It is a home built without walls, a temple made of stillness. That evening, as frost gathers again on the window panes, Brother Leontius leaves you a folded note. You find it in your wooden bowl beside the evening bread. Inside, I will be leaving soon. Not far, but far enough to become part of the earth again. Thank you for reminding me that life doesn't end when speech does. You press the note to your chest, then tuck it beside your earliest carvings. You don't need to visit his cell the next day. You know he is already preparing. And when he does go softly, peacefully, you light a candle in the chapel and place one of your carvings on the altar. Not the bees, not the walkers. A new one. A hand, open, empty, waiting. It becomes your final addition to the reliquary. No one touches it, but everyone sees it and understands. You spend the winter mostly indoors reading, listening, tending to herbs that dry slowly above the kitchen hearth. You write aphorisms on scrap parchment and tuck them into loaves of bread. One monk finds this piece isn't the end of longing, it's learning to long without pain. Another finds some loves do not fade, they simply grow roots where no one sees. One night Terenzio asks, "Do you miss her?" You pause, then answer, "I live with her. It's the first time you've said her name in years." Except you haven't. And yet, you have. Because some names echo without being spoken. You add one more note to your manuscript before closing it for good. Not a lesson, not a confession, just a truth. Love held in silence does not weaken. It deepens. It becomes the sound beneath the world. You rest your hand on the final page. Close the cover and breathe. There is snow again in the forecast, but this time it's not a quiet to be feared. It's a blanket, a pause, a lullaby. Snow falls in the night, soft, steady, and without wind. You wake to a white hush over everything. The garden, the walkways, the stone ledges all rest beneath a perfect layer, untouched and glimmering. Even the ash tree stands taller, wearing its new crown like a saint, haloed in stillness. You dress slowly, add another layer, and step outside. Each footstep crunches just enough to remind you you're alive. The air is sharp but not cruel. It fills your lungs with something ancient and honest. You pause beneath the tree and run your fingers along the knot in the bark where you once tucked away a note, long since faded or blown away. There are new ribbons now. Someone has taken up the practice in your absence. One of them is green silk, another is twine. One is simply a strip of linen, but with a small sprig of thyme knotted into it. You don't know who left them. You don't need to. The shrine at the tree's base has become a circle, a full ring of stones, each one different, large and small, rough and polished, one with the shape of a heart carved into its center, another with a cross etched by a novice's unsteady hand. You add nothing today. Sometimes presence is enough. Inside the abbey is quiet. A few monks hum as they stoke the fire. Sylvan is in the apothecary grinding dried lavender for the evening balm. You nod to him, he nods back. Neither of you speak. It's perfect. You pass the reliquary and glance in. Your carvings are still there. Someone has placed a candle beside the open hand. The flame flickers in a draft, casting shadows that dance like memory. Later that day, a traveler arrives at the gates. A young woman wrapped in wool, a leather pouch at her hip. Cheeks red from wind, she asks for shelter. You welcome her offer, tea guide her to the fire. She does not know you, but something in her eyes suggests she understands the quiet. She stays 3 days. On the second, she leaves a note tucked into a chapel pew. My heart is louder than my voice. Thank you for hearing it. You don't find it. Sylvan does. He gives it to you without a word. You add it to your manuscript, not as a chapter, as a benediction. Historians still debate the impact of monks on rural culture. Were they isolated, or were they the soft beating hearts of forgotten towns? You suspect the latter. You've never shouted, yet somehow the world still listens. You begin weaving now simple cords and cloths. You learn from a blind monk who never once misses a knot. I can feel the tension, he says. Like truth, it always pulls a little before it holds. You nod. The loom creaks like a voice learning to speak again. Your first piece is plain undyed wool, uneven in places. You leave it in the chapel pew where the traveler sat. 2 days later, it's gone. You smile. The year turns toward its close. Snow thickens. Nights stretch like long breaths. The novices sleep soundly now, their worries fewer, their silence deeper. Terenzio has begun teaching the others to carve. You catch him one morning whispering, "Let the wood tell you what it wants to be." You nearly laugh aloud. Instead, you simply nod and keep walking. Back in your cell, the manuscript waits, not for more writing, but to rest. You light a candle beside it, not to read, to warm the page. To say, "Sleep now." You lie on your cot, hands resting lightly on your chest. And for the first time in years, you whisper her name aloud. Just once. Softly. Like a prayer answered before it's finished. Winter deepens. The kind of deep that muffles the world, that wraps the abbey in thick white silence. The monks move slower, their breath visible in the cloisters. The bells echo longer through the frost-hardened air. Inside, life becomes smaller, but not lesser. Just distilled like honey, thickening in cold glass. You remain steady. Each morning you rise and walk your quiet circuit from the apothecary to the chapel, through the garden, past the hives now buried in snowdrifts, and finally beneath the ash tree. Its limbs bare its trunk, still it waits with you. It has always known how to wait. You add nothing to it now, not ribbons, not stones, just presence. And presence is, you've learned, the purest form of love. One evening, a young monk knocks at your door. He's breathless, cheeks flushed with nervousness, and he's holding something close to his chest. When you open your door, he thrusts it out to you without speaking. A candle, hand-poured. Imperfections along the sides, the wick slightly off-center. You take it gently. He stammers, I just thought you should have light, too." You nod and smile and place it beside the others. It burns slowly through the night. You dream of her. But not as the girl at the spring. Not as the ribboned figure in memory. She is older now. So are you. In the dream, you walk side by side through fields of tall grass, neither of you saying anything. The grass whispers. The bees hum in the distance. The silence between you is not the silence of absence. It is the silence of everything being finally said. You wake with the softest ache, but no pain. Just fullness. Historians still question how monastic hearts survived so much solitude. Were they lonely? Or did the act of stillness open some deeper chamber of belonging? You suspect that when the world grows quiet, the soul can finally find its voice. And yours has. You begin a new work. Not a manuscript, not carvings, not candles. A garden design for the next spring. With windless paths that lead nowhere in particular. With a circle of lavender at the center. With stones etched in simple words. Stay, breathe. Enough. Terenzio helps you lay out the sketches. He adds his own touches, an arch of woven vines, a bench carved with open hands. You say nothing. You just squeeze his shoulder. He smiles without needing more. Later in the chapel, a novice begins to cry softly during Vespers. No one turns. No one hushes him. When the prayer ends, you place your palm gently on his back. and sit there with him. He doesn't stop crying, but he doesn't cry alone. That night, you walk the halls, checking windows, candles, the slow rhythm of sleeping breaths. You pause by the reliquary. The carvings glow in the low candlelight. The hand, the bees, the ribboned walkers. They no longer feel like fragments. They are complete. You return to your cell and find one final note tucked beneath your door. In careful novice script, "Your silence helped me find my voice." You hold it, press it to your chest, and feel the warmth rise through you like dawn. Outside, the snow begins to fall again, but inside everything glows. The last snow comes quietly. Not in a flurry, not in a storm, just a hush of pale dust over the garden paths. The ash tree, now a familiar guardian, bears its frost like a crown. You wake early that morning as always and walk barefoot onto the stones. Cold, yes, but clean. The kind of cold that reminds you you're real. You stop beside the shrine of stones. It has grown no longer a collection but a circle. Whole. Complete. You trace your finger over the word you once left I did, and it feels like both an ending and a beginning. That morning, Terencio brings you a gift, a carved bell. Simple, wooden, hollow. But when he shakes it, it sings. Softly. Not loud enough to call monks to meals, not a tool, a memory. He says, "For your garden." You nod, and place it beneath the ash tree. That evening, the monks gather, not because it's a feast day, not because anyone told them to. They gather because something has shifted. You feel it. A knowing that lives in the breath. They light every candle in the chapel. The room becomes a sea of warmth, flickering alive. You sit at the back. You do not lead. You listen. And in that moment, the silence wraps around you like a friend's arm. The choir sings a hymn you've never heard before. But the melody feels familiar. No words, just hums. Like bees in spring. You close your eyes and let yourself be held by it. Historians will never record this night. There will be no footnotes, no dates. But this is what the world is made of: the unwritten, the unseen, the unfailing presence of those who love without needing to be known. You return to your cell. You light your last candle. You open your manuscript and write the final line, "I loved in silence," and the world answered in kind. Then you close the book and rest. You lie in your cot, the candle flickering low, casting golden shapes across the stone walls. The garden outside sleeps beneath a blanket of snow. The ash tree holds its frost like lace. The hives are still. The shrine is whole. The world breathes. So do you. And in this stillness, there is no need to rush. No need to remember every detail. Just allow the quiet to settle like snow, finding the hollows of your heart. There are no more letters to write. No more carvings to finish. Only the gentle rhythm of your breath. The warmth of the blanket around your shoulders. The soft hum of memory weaving through the walls. The silence is no longer empty. It is full with kindness, with meaning, with the echoes of love never spoken but always felt. You are not alone. You were never alone. The footsteps you once traced, the bees you once followed, the hands you once held in your dreams, they live within you. Not in noise, not in memory, but in the way your heart slows right now and begins to soften. So let go. You have walked far. You have listened well. You have loved deeply and without demand. And now it's time to sleep. Let the snow fall outside. Let the candle burn a little longer. Let the silence carry you home. End of script. Sweet dreams.